rock, baby!
The more the comic book movie genre overtakes my life and that of Hollywood, the more I value films in that sphere that feel unique, and hand in hand with that, the ones that feel confident in the material they are adapting. Hellboy had to be one of, if not the most confident adaptations of really outlandish material ever made at the time of release. And because of that, it's a movie that stuck with me even though the last time I sat down and watched it prior to this requested review was probably over a decade ago. It's one of those movies introduced to me by my dad, and being as young as I was at the time, I didn't really absorb any of what I was seeing beyond visuals. I still think it's an incredibly confident and visually creative movie, but much to my surprise, that doesn't really translate to me liking it all that much. There's a real idea to this movie that could have made for a great story. Hellboy is a literal demon from another dimension, accidentally brought into the world by Russian Nazis and adopted by a Christian professor. Together, he and his father spend the decades saving the world from the paranormal as part of the organization BPRD, along with Fishman Abe Sapien and tons of other agents. An evil scheme by those same Russian Nazis just happens to be brewing with the intent of releasing an ancient Eldritchian horror onto the world, as young FBI agent John Myers shows up to act as Hellboy's babysitter of sorts and an eyes-in for the audience. Throw in a romance between Hellboy and another paranormal individual named Liz, and there's a lot here to make a really meaty-feeling movie. Sadly, something just isn't clicking with me. The movie has a lot going for it. It embraces a real heightened, goofy tone and manages to stick with that while still allowing me to empathize with the people in it. It's got a real distinct look, as you could only expect from Del Toro, and Hellboy himself is a big, broad cartoon of a character, and you can tell Ron Perlman is having a ball with the role. The fact that I like him accomplishes a lot, but I left this viewing hoping that the sequel would turn out better, because I really want to see this character in a movie that's as engaging as he is on his own. He's a distinct character, a cigar-chomping, wisecracking teen in an adult's body. As it stands, the characters around Hellboy are all drawn pretty thin. John Hurt, Selma Blair, Rupert Evans, and the rest are all giving good performances, but I don't know how much I could tell you about any of them as people. What it feels like they're all missing is more screen time spent with Hellboy himself. His relationship with Liz, Abe, Myers, and his father all have real potential, but perhaps because the movie is trying too hard to juggle all of them, none of their dynamics get quite enough breathing room. The worst, though, has gotta be the villain Rasputin. There's nothing to this guy, he's a non-entity. There's more character in his sycophantic, evil Bond girl henchwoman, or even in Yvonne, the surly ancient corpse who's in the movie for 2 scenes total. I'm not remotely a fan of the whole "a movie is only as good as its villain" rhetoric, but giving this guy some real presence and identifiable character, or even just a compelling reason for wanting the end of the world, would have done this movie a ton of good. On the other hand, I do like that there's never a Hellboy is ostracized by the public for looking different angle. We do kinda get that with Jeffrey Tambor's character, but it's a bit hard to get a read on that guy. He just kinda falls out of the movie after he and Hellboy actually earn each other's respect in what is admittedly one of the movie's best moments. And the same is unfortunately true of Abe Sapien. That brings me to how weird the ending is handled and the movie's overall strange pacing issues. This is a movie that for the most part really feels its length until we get to the climax where it ironically starts to get super rushed. The final scene especially is real abrupt, not helped by a tacked-on narration. I don't want to assume anything, but it all reeks of last-minute edits. Like there was more to this ending that got cut out for the sake of the running time maybe, or perhaps Del Toro just couldn't think of a decent epilogue to the movie's events. There's this theme of choice versus destiny that we hammer in at the end despite not really having built it up through the rest of the movie. Then again, maybe I'm wrong and that is seeded throughout the movie and I just didn't pick up on it because I can't hear half the dialogue. I don't know if it's my setup or the sound mixing or the actors mumbling, but being able to tell what the characters are saying is pretty important and I can't most of the time. I almost feel like I shouldn't even be reviewing this movie until I watch it again with subtitles just so I'm sure I'm not missing anything massive. Maybe it's just that kept me from being really invested in this story, but I do still think the pacing is an issue. The movie just doesn't carry me with it, so unless I'm admiring the visual elements like sets, designs, and direction, then I'm just not getting anything out of this film. I suppose, to swing back to the positives real quick, the action is pretty good. There's a real cartoonish sensibility to the action scenes that I dig, helped by how relatively well the CG's held up. I won't say it blends seamlessly with the practical effects and makeup, but I question if we could do a much better job of it even today. It's a bit disappointing that Hellboy only fights one kind of monster throughout the whole movie, not counting Rasputin's zombie assassin and the Cthulhu monster in the climax, but the action scenes were definitely the most fun I had with the film and where it most managed to keep my attention. I'm honestly surprised that this review is this short, but Hellboy comes off to me as a very style over substance movie. That style is great. Visually and tonally, this movie is perfect for me. Unfortunately, style can only do so much when I'm not real interested in what's going on underneath. I don't feel comfortable judging it as a straightforward romp, something that's just trying to be a simple action-adventure flick without a real story, since by the end it's really trying to be about things. I just don't think it works, and can really only hope that the sequel will do more to keep me engaged.